What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Time Off with the Prof. We hope you all are liking these videos. Don't forget to share them with your friends and classmates. We hope you like the timestamps we've added in the description. You can use them to navigate the questions we ask and find answers to those that you're interested in. With that, this is Time Off with the Prof.
I am so excited to help introduce the professor we have for you guys today from the International Relations Department. Doctor, would you please share your name, pronouns, and your favorite spot on campus?
Okay, so my name is Beatrice Magaloni, and my favorite place in campus is Lagunita. So this is a place I often go for a walk or jogging, and I really love to watch the birds there. It's very peaceful. So I hope when you come, you really take time to visit La Lagunita.
Yeah, I used to live in Robley, which is right by Lagunita, and I loved going on those walks around the lake. So yeah, I love that spot as well. And Professor, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what things were like growing up?
Great. Yes, I am from Mexico. I was born in Mexico City. I've been living at Stanford for 20 years. I have 3 kids. One of them also is a student at Stanford. She's going to be a junior next year. And then I have 2 boys. One of them graduated this year. The other is 15. So he's going to take a gap year, the one who graduated, and is going to do film at USC. I grew up in Mexico City, and at that time, Mexico was a significantly safer place. We used to travel a lot in road trips with my family, and I just love to travel, especially to Yucatan, which is my favorite place, southern Mexico, Yucatan, Oaxaca, Chiapas. So I really, these are some of my favorite places, and I still go there a lot because I do work in rural communities there. So that's how I grew up in Mexico, traveling a lot to these places.
I had the honor of going on one of Stanford's BOSP trips to Oaxaca with Dr. Gabriel Garcia's, and we were able to work in hospitals there, and it was so wonderful. We were there for Guelaguetza, which is the huge festival they have in July, and that was so fun. So when you say Oaxaca, my heart started beating like, oh, my favorite place. So
it is amazing. Yes.
Growing up in Mexico and, like you said, traveling a lot, how did you get involved or interested in political science, and what was your academic path that led you to Stanford and where you're at today?
So I actually didn't start as a political scientist. I am a lawyer. So I studied law. I became a lawyer. I was always very intrigued by issues of social justice, criminal justice, and really wanted to devote my life to bringing justice, especially to underprivileged people, poor people. But I realized as I was studying law, I still, lived in, when I was studying, Mexico was an authoritarian regime. And I learned that, the laws were really not a way to bring justice. A lot of them had to be changed and challenged. The institutions had to be changed and challenged. So I understood that by being a lawyer, I couldn't do that. So I graduated from law school, and I wrote a thesis on civil disobedience. And then I decided I was going to study political science and came to do a PhD at Duke University. That's where I studied. And I think it was a really good decision to leave law and understand more about what causes institutions, what drives behavior, political behaviors, so to be able to transform those institutions. And now I'm really going back to a lot of the topics that interest me, but now from the perspective of political science. So for example, I work a lot on issues of police violence and criminal justice. And so having that combination has been very useful. But when you start, you never know really where life is going to take you. I never really saw myself as an academic back then, and I'm really happy that somehow I was able to follow this path of being an academic, and really intrigued by the same type of questions that pushed me to study law in the beginning.
And we're really happy that you are an academic here at Stanford. And so besides teaching, what sort of projects or what sort of work are you involved with on campus?
So when I got tenure, I decided that I wanted to bring academia to social action, and really to be able to use my tools to transform the world in the ways I could. So I funded the Poverty, Violence, and Governance Lab. And the mission of the lab is to work on issues of lawlessness and violence, and to on the one hand, understand what drives this social pathology, and on the other, be able to design interventions or evaluate policy interventions that work. So I've been working together with students, both undergraduate and graduate students, for over now 10 years. I think the lab has been going on issues that relate to, as I mentioned at the beginning, criminal justice, police violence, and mostly working on Brazil and Mexico. Latin America is today the most violent region of the world outside of war zones. So more people die in Latin America than in any other region of the world. And as you probably know, a lot of the migrants that are coming, and asylum seekers that are coming to the US from this region, Central America and Mexico, are really escaping very serious persecution and violence by criminal groups and the state. And so a lot of what we do is really focus on these problems. I also provide expert witness testimonies to asylum seekers, and that I do as pro bono. So as I mentioned, I come back to the law questions, and I do that, as I mentioned, pro bono, but I increasingly get more and more people to ask me to do this, lawyers and people who are defending asylum seekers. So I'm bringing more students to help me with these cases, and it's really been great to be able to see that from academia you can really try to transform the world. And this is something that I think you will find at Stanford, because that's an ethos, I think, in the institution, that there is a lot of professors, researchers that are really focused on trying to transform the world that we see.
Well, thank you so much for doing such beautiful work, getting students, more people involved in such important, impactful, needed work. Quickly, you obviously have a law degree and a political science degree, as you said, but you represent the Department of International Relations. Can you tell me how those intersect, and what other factors intersect to make the IR department what it is, and how a student can really shape their degree in IR?
Great. So I'm in the political science department, and in political science we have, you can study IR, you can study comparative politics, you can study American politics, you can study issues of social justice, or even, so we have different sort of specializations within political science, but we also have a very significant IR major at Stanford, and a lot of students who are interested in issues of development, of global justice, of the environment, and are really interested in understanding these problems, focus on IR. So I think it's one of the favorite majors in Stanford. So you will have both professors from the political science department, but there is also the Freeman Spogli Institute, where my lab is based. And it has centers like the Center for Development, Center for CDDRL, so Development, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. It has also CSAC, which focuses on security. It has also a really fascinating program that focuses on Rural Education Action Program that focuses on education and how to bridge the gap between poor students in China and students who are in the wealthy areas in the coast. Scott Russell directs that lab. So there is a lot of options if you are interested in, as I say, global issues at FSI Political Science. And that's where, so I am based in both places.
Great. And what classes do you teach? And are any of them frosh friendly?
I used to teach a freshman seminar on dictatorships and democracies, and I think I will start offering it again. Right now, I'm not teaching freshmen, but I do teach for undergraduates. So I teach a course on poverty and governance. It's called the seminar that I teach, and it's on the issues that we've been talking about global development. So how do you understand and fight poverty, combat poverty? How do you understand and control violence? And how do you fix institutions? So for example, how do you control corruption so that you can have states that actually function and work to bring the poor out of poverty? So that's the focus of that course. I also teach another course on violence, and I focus on issues like civil wars, terrorism, and also criminal violence, which is a lot of the work that I do in Brazil and Mexico, and also violence by the state, as we mentioned, police violence, which is a very significant component of my research. And then I also teach for graduate students one of the core classes in comparative politics. It's our first core seminar. I'm going to be teaching that next year. And I also teach another class on authoritarian politics. And let me see what else. And another class on Latin American politics. Yes.
Oh, well, it's so wonderful that students throughout their career can have so many opportunities to work with you, to learn from you, and stuff like that. So, as we've been, we mentioned to you earlier before this interview, the frosh are currently, grappling with a lot in life. And, whatever that is, in the 3 books program, they have the opportunity to learn about. This year it is grit. It's about, perseverance and stuff like that. So, from your background, what does grit really mean to you? And from there, who are some of the grittiest people or grittiest person that you know?
Oh, this is such a great question. So grit for me means resiliency. And I think it means a perspective in life in which you don't see yourself as a victim. Obviously in life we have, we all suffer. We all suffer different situations that are very challenging. And I think that gritty people don't see themselves as victims, but really want to more experience themselves as warriors. So that's a little bit of what I see. It's really resiliency, courage, and in a way, this optimism in terms of difficult situations in life can be an opportunity. And I think a gritty person can see that, can just because of the perspective, can transform challenges into opportunities. And in terms of the grittiest person, so I want to mention a student of mine who grew up in Brazil. She grew up in very poor neighborhood near Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the most violent places in the world. A lot of my research focuses there. She grew up in a very poor neighborhood, surrounded by this very challenging, violent environment. And from there, she became a Stanford student. Then she also was my program manager in my lab for almost 8 years. And now she's studying her PhD in anthropology at UCLA. She took care of her sister, little sister, and she started working because her family was poor when she was around 12 years old. And I think she's very gritty because exactly of the things that I told you. She has never complained. She's very joyful. She has been taking the challenges in her life as opportunity, and all the way that, you know, she arrived to Stanford, and now she's doing a PhD. So she's someone I really admire a lot. Yes.
Wow.
Her name is Vanessa Mello.
Vanessa Mello. Wow, what
Yes.
an awesome story. What an awesome example. And so, like Victoria said, you know, these frosh, they're dealing with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things that are going on in the world that are causing them to kind of have this anxiety about coming to Stanford and about their futures. And so do you have any further advice or any further counsel for these frosh that are coming into this uncertain environment?
Yes, first I want to tell you that I actually sympathize a lot with what you are going through. I have, as I mentioned at the beginning, kids that are your age. So my daughter, she's studying at Stanford, and my son, who is taking a gap year but starting to study next, you know, the year after. And so first of all, I through them, I can really sense what this young generation is going through, and so I do have a lot of empathy for that, but I want to say that this is a very challenging time for so many people around the world. So many people are suffering, so many people have not, you know, lost families, so lost loved ones, but also lost their jobs, and really are in a very, very hard situation. So we are privileged. We have the privilege to be able to, you know, get educated, access to a university like Stanford, to its resources. And I think that this generation, looking at the question of grit, will have the opportunity, because of how much this pandemic is really changing the way we are conceiving ourselves as humanity in this planet, the role that we have. So I think it's going to be on you really to initiate the big change that we require. And the pandemic is pushing us to really think about this. So in a way, I see this as an opportunity. It's obviously a challenge to study through Zoom and social distance, and especially young people, really the social aspect is so essential. So it must be so much harder for you than for us, you know, like older people. But I think that you are going to be really the leaders of the change that we need. And so that's an opportunity. And I am excited for what can happen, really optimistic in a way, despite the fact that, you know, obviously these are going to be very challenging years.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, frosh are asking us, and Kason and I can very much relate to, you know, everything you said that your children are going through. So quickly, a last question that we have is, you know, in the spring, we're able to teach online. We'll probably be teaching online for the foreseeable future. Do you have any, you know, concrete advice on how to maximize online learning, connect with professors, especially as freshmen? So.
Yeah, so it was a challenge. I taught 2 classes through Zoom, you know, 2 of my favorite classes on violence and on development. I always love these classes. And I realized that it's very tiring to be in Zoom, you know, taking classes is really, really tiring. So I hope that, you know, professors are learning, so classes have to be shorter. And you know, a 3-hour seminar through Zoom is something that is not really pedagogic. I don't know how to pronounce the word correctly. But what I can really advise is, I mean, the social aspect of learning is something that you are going to be missing. So I am now experimenting this with my lab. So I still meet with the students, and we meet in groups, we meet one-on-one. And I think that this is something I would advise you to do, to be able to connect with the students, do working groups together, smaller groups than in the big classes, because that's something that you are going to be really missing by studying through Zoom. So that's an advice I can give you. It's been really improving. The more we do this, the sort of the better we're getting at.
Yeah, thank you so much for that advice. And thank you again. That was all the questions we had. So thank you so much for meeting with us. And stay on the line, Dr. Magaloni, and we'll talk a little bit afterward. But we're so grateful that you were able to come, and we'll see you later.
I want to welcome everyone in this year. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Stanford. Take care.